Good evening, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education is now convened in its regular monthly meeting. We wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who has joined us this evening and to our television viewers to this meeting of the school board. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about what we are doing within the school system. Administration will present information, some of which has been presented in one of our monthly work sessions. And this is to keep you up to date and to ensure that our vision of success for every child is realized. The board invites public comments at the beginning of the board meeting before each agenda item. Board members will carefully listen and consider comments from the public, but the board does not engage in a discussion with speakers. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Now, I would like to make a very quick announcement that there will be no operational services and policy work session on Thursday, November 9th. This work session will be combined with the academic and student services work session on Thursday, November 2nd, 2017. Also, our board member, Minnie Fort Brown, is on the phone. She is in Atlanta.
Hi, board. Hi, Durham Public Schools family.
Everybody says hi, Minnie. So now the next agenda item is a moment of silence. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is celebrations. And, oh, well, I didn't assign anybody a celebration, so. Oh, Chip's first, okay. Very good.
We flipped it, and we are going to begin celebrations tonight with our Student of the Month for September. The Student of the Month program recognizes students have distinguished themselves in character and service and academic achievement. And while you all are coming down, I would like to invite Mr. Lamont Dixon up. He is the assistant principal at New Tech High School at Hillside, and he will introduce to you the September Student of the Month.
Thank you, board members. We certainly appreciate this opportunity to share just a few things about one of what we feel is an exceptional young lady at Hillside New Tech who really embodies true character of the students that we graduate from our program. Want to share just a little bit about Jamie Dubon. Jamie is laser focused. She is a congenial young lady, very spirited individual. She is often seen wandering, making her way throughout the halls, interacting positively with her peers and classmates as well. She is well respected, again, by her peers and teachers and staff members at our school. Just some additional points about Jamie that I'm sure you'll find extremely amazing. She migrated here from Honduras. Upon her arrival, Jamie was not familiar with the English language, so she was essentially a non-speaker of English. She had to overcome the language barrier. Jamie is involved in the community. She works at Duke Forest. She takes care of her little brother. She volunteers at El Centro. It's a tutoring service for Hispanics. She also volunteers at the Urban Ministry, feeding homeless and less fortunate individuals. She is a former member of our soccer and volleyball teams. She also takes classes at Durham Tech. She works hard to achieve her goals while working to help others reach theirs. She is working to attend college, and what we find very impressive about this young lady, she maintains a 4.0 grade point average. Jamie aspires to attend Meredith College. We are very certain that that is where she will continue her education. And we wanted to get a statement from one of her teachers. Jamie is the epitome of what the American dream is supposed to be. Despite the many obstacles and adversities that she has faced, she refuses to give she refuses to give up. She's actively in pursuit of her goals and her aspirations. She works hard to maintain success, and along the way, she's very interested in helping those who are around her. She is truly an inspiration to us all. So board members and those who are in attendance, I give you Jamie DeBon.
Board members, those in attendance, want to just also talk about our Be Our Guest program. On the hour before our monthly meeting, we are so happy to have a chance to sit down with parents from selected schools. And I don't want to make anyone jealous, but the Northern Culinary class really made a meal for us. I mean, we had salmon, we had steak, rice, pilaf, pecan pie, sweet potato. Is anybody jealous yet? We had a great time. What's most important is we had a wonderful discussions at our tables, really heartfelt, real world situations, great things that we're doing well, things that could be done better, and that's what it's about. And just how much we love the students in our district and how much they're loved in their homes. So just to show our gratitude to you, please, as I call your school, come up and shake our hands. Just so we can say thank you for coming out. So the first school is Eno Valley. Parents from Eno Valley. Come on around. Parkwood Elementary. Pleasure to meet you. Absolutely. George Watts Elementary. And the School for Creative Studies. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the superintendent's update. Aaron.
Thank you. It's an honor to bring the superintendent update to you. First update on behalf of the staff and all the employees of Durham Public Schools, I bring a warm welcome to our new superintendent, Dr. Mabinga. Probably not supposed to share this, but he has jumped in both feet full force. He's been here already tackling some of Durham's great challenges before he even officially starts. But he will go on the payroll as of November 27th. He will start with us right after the holidays, Thanksgiving holidays, and he has already shared his vision and will go out and be listening to the community during his first 90 days. So again, on behalf of staff, I know we are all very excited to have Dr. Mabinga join us in Durham Public Schools, and we look forward to him starting. Couple quick announcements. The PTA Council will be hosting the STEM Community Family Fall Festival at R.N. Harris Elementary this Saturday, October 28th from 1 to 4 p.m. Partnerships with Bayer Corporation and DPS Family Academy. Educational activities, food, and fun for elementary and middle school students. Child care will be provided for ages 3 through 5, lunch and interpretation services provided. So please join us at that wonderful event. The following Saturday, November 4th, we will be having the Magnet and CTE Pathway Fair at Southern School of Energy and Sustainability from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's an event that many parents look forward to and enjoy the rich information that is provided with that. We'll hopefully have visits from our students and teachers. They'll see demonstrations and find out more about the programs and themes of all of our Magnet schools. I do remind the parents coming to that our board took a great step at its last work session, and the families of current 5th graders at Club, R.N. Harris, and Holt Elementary should be aware that our board has approved a programmatic link to Shepherd Magnet Middle School's international baccalaureate programs receiving higher application priority. So again, hopefully parents are aware of that, and we'll continue to put that information out in the community. The latest issue, if you haven't seen it, this is the 2nd edition of the DPS School and Family Magazine, a wonderful opportunity for some great things that are going on in Durham Public Schools, and very timely, our magnet schools are highlighted in that magazine and done in a very well professional manner. So I welcome you to find a copy of that and take a look at that. And finally, we'd like to thank both of our current mayor candidates, Steve Shule and Fareed Ali, who went out to our Neal Middle School last week for a student forum. Students, as always in Durham Public Schools, asked excellent, hard-hitting questions of both candidates. But first and foremost, we appreciate their attendance and their commitment to education and coming to Neal Middle School. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much for that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I have make an announcement, please?
Sure, please.
The award-winning Hillside High School Theater Department is going to begin its theater season with Gala Night featuring Disney High School Musical, produced and directed by Wendell Tabb. That's going to be starting on Friday, November 3rd. At 6:15, the procession begins, and the production will take place at 7:15. The reception starts at 6:15, and then the procession into the theater is at 7:15. So the curtain probably comes up at around 7:30 or 8. However, the reason I'm mentioning this is not only because it is a longstanding tradition of great theater, but this year, our own Xavier Kaysen will be honored in the presence of these actresses and actors, Starletta Dupois and Ernest Thompson and Petrie Hawkins Bird. Also, Hillside Band legend Dr. Joseph Mitchell and Mr. Clark Edgerton, along with our own Xavier Kaysen, will be featured. The National Negro Baseball League player, Mr. Artis Plummer, and the posthumous recipient is Ms. Gloria Timberlake, who was a longtime chorus teacher at Hillside. All of the board members have been invited to attend and be a part of the procession and attend, of course, the reception. But also our public is asked to come out and support the Disney High School Musical and the theater program the award-winning theater program at Hillside High School. So I just wanted to make sure that we made that announcement and recognize Xavier. We're going to give a hand clap to Xavier. For his excellence in musicianship and training so many young people to just become better citizens because they know music. Thank you.
Thank you, Minnie. And if you guys could bear just for a moment, I did want to mention, this past month since we last met has been a very interesting month for the district. We were we had a big victory this past month, and I have the official letter here explaining that, where both of our schools that were, well, actually all of our schools that were being considered for a state takeover are no longer on the list. That is a huge victory for Durham.
Yes.
And with that, we had a lot of community support. We had, rallies, we had news articles, we had television appearances, we had a big swell of community support. And I want to make sure that that doesn't stop, because now more than ever, Durham Public Schools needs our community to put their hands around our schools. Just because we won this victory this year doesn't mean that the fight is over. And I want to remind everyone that every person in Durham County has a vested interest in the success of Durham Public Schools, if you have children in Durham Public Schools or not. Public schools, traditional public schools, are the foundation of any civilization, any city, any county. When people move here, they don't say, oh, I wonder how good the charter schools are. They say, I wonder how good the schools are. And that is the public schools. So you have a vested interest. If you're interested in the success of Durham, you should be interested in the success of Durham Public Schools. So he said to say it again, if you are interested in the success of Durham, you need to be interested in the success of Durham Public Schools, traditional public schools. So that means don't let this fight and this fire die out because we no longer have the state on our backs, because they're still there. Don't think for one moment that they are not looking. State Senator Phil Berger recently said charter schools are a big value to Durham because they ease enrollment. If we got rid of all the charter schools, they wouldn't know what to do with all the kids. I'm paraphrasing. And the reporter called me and asked me. I said, no, that's wrong. We'd be able to handle our students in Durham Public Schools. So there's this narrative out there. So I make a plea to Durham, is to keep that fire that we had during that fight up. Go to the schools, ask the teacher, ask the principals, how can I help? Even if you don't have students in that school, how can I help? What can I do? Businesses, go to those schools, go to all 52 of our schools. How can I help? It doesn't have to just be those two. We have schools in need across our district. One of the programs, I actually spoke at a program on Wednesday at Eastway. It was all pro fathers. But it is actually, families, really. It should be all pro families because it was everyone there. And it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and it's just a little breakfast. They get together, and they asked me to come speak. And I was extremely proud of the number of people who showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was a struggle for me. It was a struggle for me, but they were there, bright-eyed. They were excited. They had a movement activity by the gym teacher, the gym coach. They had a drawing, a raffle, and I spoke. We had breakfast, all types of breakfast. People were bringing in breakfast. And from what I understand, it's continued to grow. Now, I'm sure there are other programs like that across our district, but that is something we can continue to get the community and the parents involved with, doing something like that. I told them that I would speak about it at the board meeting because I was just so impressed. I was so excited about what I saw. And I was invited there by Turquoise Lejeune. Is that it? Parker, yeah, Turquoise Parker. And I thank her all the time for inviting me. If we can do that at Eastway, if we could do that at all of our schools, imagine how different our environments would be. If we get volunteers to do that, imagine what our schools would be. And this is the perfect time. While the iron's hot, this is the perfect time for the community to get in and do those sort of things, to draw the support around our schools, because we need it. The schools can't do it by themselves. The teachers can't do it by themselves. Administration can't. This is a community thing. Durham Public Schools belongs to Durham, and we should treat it that way. So thank you all for letting me talk, but please don't let that fire simmer. Let's keep that going. Do what we can to surround our schools, because we're winning. We got Dr. Mubanga coming in. We've shown some success from previous years. We're winning. Let's keep that winning. Let's let the community win. And when Durham Public Schools wins, the community wins. So thank you all. The next item on the agenda is agenda review and approval.
Move approval of the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimously. We're at general public comment. We have one person signed up, Dwight Chandler. Yes, sir, please come up. You have 3 minutes.
Board and the rest of the, Mr. Chairman and the rest of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak. I hear you speak about the victories that Durham Public Schools is experiencing, and I'm glad to hear that. The young lady, seeing people do well, I'm just glad. I'm a productive member of this community, been born here, bred here, graduated through Durham Public Schools, but right now I'm suffering a loss, and I feel like Durham Public Schools has to accept some of the blame. My daughter's enrolled at Durham Performance Learning Center. Last year she was enrolled in Eastern Guilford, where she did amazing, did wonderful. She came here and got a staff member to enroll her without parents' consent, either me or her mom's consent. Filed a complaint down here at the central office, never heard anything back from the complaint. Worked with a local agency here and we came up and said, hey, she feels like she needs to be here. Let's allow her to be at Durham Performance Learning Center. We spoke with Ms. Futrell, the principal, and she sold us on the program, saying it was a wonderful program, the strides they had made over there on Driver Street. But I can say they were all lies. Last Wednesday, I called over to the school to question if my daughter was in school on Monday of that week. And I was informed that she had missed 83 periods since the beginning of the school year. Me or her mom had never been called, no letters. We received no letters. They searched through the computers to make sure they had our current contact information. They did. And it's just, so I came down here again and filed a second complaint. And the consensus is, I'm a local barber, so we get students from all schools in our shop. And the consensus with some of the young men that come into the barber shop is, man, it's easy over there. Man, we don't got to come to school. Everything's on the computer. They don't require anything. But when you talk about a community winning, it has to be the whole entire community. And I still have yet to receive any resolution for either of the complaints I filed down here in the central office. And it's just sad because I see my daughter losing because she's receiving a conflicted message. It starts at the home. I recognize that, but it also takes a village to raise these children and shape these minds. And I still have yet. Mr. Bennett called me. I talked to Mr. Sears last week, and he referred me to call back up here. But it's just been a real struggle getting any type of feedback from this central office here. And I understand y'all in transition, but I think that it's a lot of students that are still suffering. And that's what I wanted to bring to the attention here, because it's really sad.
If you're not finished, you're fine.
Okay. But it's just really sad because, some students are still falling by the wayside, and we know the end of that road. And so as a parent, as a dad who's trying to fight for his daughter, one of the things that stood out was almost a month ago, my daughter wanted a part-time job, and it was at a local Burger King. So took her to work on the first day. I went in to find out exactly what time she would get off. I was thinking 9, maybe 9:30. But the manager said, no, she'll get off at 1:30 a.m. I said, there's no way. It's a school night. How can she? Her principal gave her permission, and they produced the form that the principal signed. And so I went back. You could use Power School to check the grades. Went back and found that there's no way that the principal signed this form, because at the time my daughter had a 25 in one of her classes. There's no way that a principal thought she was responsible enough to work till 1:30 a.m. in the morning, but they have the document, and that's what Burger King is standing behind. And so I'm trying to appeal to this board that, we heard all the Kestrel Heights, news in the past, but it looks like we have another school doing the same thing. And even going over there on Wednesday, I immediately came here, and I was instructed to go to the school and get an actual printout of each day that she had missed in her grades. And even after receiving it, they sat me down with the truancy officers or, the staff members that deals with that, and I couldn't receive an answer why no one was notified. Because one of the days I specifically noted that I dropped off at school, so I know she was there. So she was able to walk in one door and walk out another, and their excuse is, well, we can't physically stop them and make them stay here. But you can notify a parent that she's not here. No generated phone calls, no anything. And I'm approximately 21 days out of a school year already, and school just basically begun.
Mm-hmm.
That is terrible. That is terrible. And I understand it's a large school and it's only a certain amount of staff there, but that's tragic. Because at the end of the day, like me and Ms. Fitrell, I asked her, I said, why would you sign that form giving her permission without consent of a parent, saying she could work on the school night till 1:30? And she was like, well, I let my son work. And it's just tragic. It's tell after tell, the enrollment. And that's outside of your policy. The policy as a parent needs to be present in order for school to for them to be enrolled. And so that's my concern is here. I wanted to get involved. I wanted to come to a meeting because I said maybe that's where I'm falling short. But I can't get any feedback from anybody. It's, I still have yet 2 complaints so far. Mr. Bennett called me. He was going to call me back. I appreciate that one phone call. Appreciate Mr. Sears accepting my call. But other than that, we still have no answers. We still have students that are still governed by the same irresponsible adults. I'll label them that because that's really irresponsible. And
so what we'll do is we'll make sure that you get a follow-up immediately, well, very soon, to make sure we get that resolved.
Okay.
And I do apologize. I did say we're winning, but we do have a road to travel. There's no blindness there. We fully understand. We definitely have a road to travel, but we do have successes that we like to celebrate. And
I love to see them. I love to see them.
Right.
So I thank y'all for hearing me out.
All right, thank you, sir.
Addressing the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. We appreciate you coming. Thank you so much. Okay. We have no one else signed up for public comment. Okay. So the next item is the minutes for September 28th, 2017. Approval of the minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the minutes for September 28th, 2017, which is our last board meeting. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. I believe we also have October 16th special call minutes in the packet as well. Is that correct?
Those were
Yeah.
those closed?
So we have 2. No, this was the special call meeting for our announcement of the superintendent.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the packet, so.
Okay. October.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we'll take an amended motion.
I amend the motion to approve. Can we approve both at the same time?
Yeah.
Approve the minutes from October 16th and September 28th, 2017.
Second.
has been amended and reseconded that we approve the minutes for September 28th and October 16th, 2017. Any discussion, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please
Aye.
use the same sign. It passes unanimously. Reports of the board. I don't, yeah. All right, so, yeah, consent items. I have okay. The consent items that we have for today are the North Carolina School Boards Association policies 3120 and 3135. North Carolina School Boards Association policy 3102, the online instruction e-learning. Policy 6305, safety and student transportation services, the second reading.
I move approval of all items on the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the consent items as listed. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimously. Operational services.
Good evening. Tonight we have one item from Operational Services. We have Julie Spencer, Kim Hager, and Paula Sir with us here this evening. They've all led our project team for our Class 3 class size implementation. So they're here tonight to give us some additional summary and update as was asked for out of the committee, so the entire public can hear an update on that. Julie?
Good evening. This evening, I'd like to bring to you an update on our House Bill 13 compliance. For those of you who may not be familiar with this legislation, it is the new requirements around how we use our teacher-funded allotments in kindergarten through third grade to ensure that our classes are smaller. That's the short version of what that piece of legislation is. We heard a preview of this last week with John Long, who gave you some information around our elementary school building capacity. And so I just want to expand on that and provide for you a more robust view of how this is, how we've started our year with the legislation and kind of as we plan for next year. So I think the best way for us to do this is to walk through the PowerPoint. It's pretty much linked into two sections of 17-18 and where we are right now, one set of requirements, and then thinking about as we plan for 2018-19. I know school just started, but we're at the end of the first quarter, and believe it or not, we're already well into planning and thinking about the implications of this legislation for next school year. As we think about, so remember I'm talking about this current school year 2017-18 and how the legislation requirements have impacted us. As we think about how our teacher allotments occur, and of course Paula Zur can provide far more depth of knowledge around the funding allotments than I can, but as we think about the allotments in kindergarten, we are allotted at one teacher per 18 students in kindergarten, and then you can follow suit with first grade, one teacher per 16 students, then second and third grade, one per 17. And so this new legislation required schools to adhere to the allotments in a more real way. So for example, how enhancement classes, because you may have art teacher, visual arts, you may have a dance, you may have music, and all of that is part of how you use that funding allotment. So part of the requirement of this is that individual class size ratios maintained at the 1-23. We are not allowed to have a class that would be over 23. And so that's kind of the bottom line when you explain to school staff, we have to ensure that all of our classes are at 23 or below, and that we're not submitting any classes to the state. And I'll fill you in on where we are in just a second. As we think about the other requirement, we, as a district, may have a class size average of kindergarten through third grade of 1 teacher per 20. I would point out that the bottom bullet of this is actually the amended version of the House bill. So when we talk about Phase 1, which is 1718, this was kind of a revised version of the original plan. When we think about the K-3 class size, there are many considerations that we have to think about. We are including both core classes and enhancement classes, and I will say there has been some miscommunication over the course of the last few months regarding how enhancements are included, aren't included, and so at this point they are included, but they are considered a little differently than how our core classes are. But they are part of for example, the district-wide class average. When we think about EC classes, for example, that is actually pulled out. So whereas you may have a smaller class of 6 or 7 students due to special needs, those are not included. As we think about the only way that you would have a class over 23 would be that you would apply and get approved a waiver. And just for the record, the waivers are catastrophic events and such. It's not as if we qualify for any of the waivers that are available. However, there is also a waiver process new this week for enhancements, and that is for those classes that may be over 23 that we would be able to apply for a waiver. And we may, in fact, have a few of those kind of special situations, whereas they have co-teachers for their core classes, but when they go to an art class, the class may be at 26 or 27. And so I do anticipate that as we prepare for the November submission that we may have a few of those. I think a big piece of this is that the expectation is that the legislation is not that it's just when we report it in October and when we report it in February, as noted at the bottom. It is that we are continually monitoring and that we're supposed to be in compliance throughout the school year. A big piece of this is that as we think about how our data is collected, it is in PowerSchool as far as student schedules, as far as how teachers are scheduled. And so just even thinking about the complexity of course code numbers as it relates to whether it's a core class, whether it's a co-teaching, whether it's an EC, whether it's a dual immersion. So obviously a big piece of this is making sure that our data is correct. DPS, we have been planning and I put our main core project team, which includes our staff from PowerSchool, Human Resources, Finance, Elementary Teaching, Leading and Learning. However, that is certainly not an exhaustive list. We have Public Affairs has been involved, Student Assignment has been involved, Facilities has been involved. You can imagine the complexity of thinking about how class size, this level of change for our K-3 may impact our district. As we think about our main core work has been to monitor the work of our schools up to this point and to help troubleshoot individual school situations. And the work is not over. It's really just begun as we begin preparing for 2018-19. Thinking about the steps, just the sequence of knowing the legislation, which then changed in April, and thinking about how that has, how we plan around not knowing what our funded allotments are going to be, thinking about working with schools, especially Human Resources, around the staffing plans, who's teaching what, how many kindergarten teachers, who are those teachers, ensuring that, of course, the vacancies are posted and such. Thinking about specific school planning, whereas that may require moving classrooms, converting classrooms, thinking about the typical things of where my student numbers may change. I used to have a big first grade, now it's second grade, and how you make those adaptations. And then thinking about the reporting, which is, of course, what goes into PowerSchool, which elementary schools are not as used to having to think about course codes in the same way that, for example, a high school is. So just really digging in and working with our school staff and our elementary schools on scheduling. And then, of course, monitoring and working with those schools who have vacancies, who had unanticipated numbers, increases in one grade level or decreases in a grade level. Of course, as you know, we don't always know who's going to show up the very first day of school. So really, for this first quarter, we have spent a lot of time just monitoring and helping schools be aware and helping them troubleshoot. I thought this was important to just once again show the complexity of this particular legislation and the impact that, of course, communication being a very big piece of this to all stakeholders. It's important for our parents to understand why they may, in fact, have 2 teachers in the classroom this year, or why they may maybe the science lab that they are used to having is now a kindergarten classroom due to the class size. So just helping people understand the complexity of the legislation and the requirements and how it may impact at the school level. Certainly staffing is a huge piece of this. Recruitment, hiring. I will say elementary has not always been the place where we've had the hiring challenges, and of course right now it certainly is a great need for us. Thinking about program review, what kinds of special programs do we have that take up classroom space that are great programs that we want in our schools, but that we have to reconsider due to making sure that we have literally enough class space for our kindergarten through 3rd grade smaller classes. Thinking about student assignment, I think one of the challenges as we prepare for Magnet Fair soon, also student transfers, how we think of very differently to ensure that our schools can plan for the requirements. Facilities, you heard in depth last week about building capacity and the need for classrooms, and then certainly the financial implications of allotments and how that may, in fact, although it is K-3, ultimately it can impact K-12 as we think about how our teachers are allotted. So currently, what are the implications? We are sitting right now, as of last Friday, 28 vacancies in K-5 at our elementary schools. And so obviously this is tremendous. Some of these are new positions that came in July as it relates to class size. Not all of them are, but many of them are. And so certainly staffing is a big piece of this. You heard last week, once again, about facilities, thinking about conversions, converted space. I would say in my work with our elementary schools and kind of hearing from them how this has played out in their schools, about half of our elementary schools converted some type of room, at least one room, into to have an additional K-3 class in their school. Most of the classrooms at this point, from kind of working with our schools, most of the classrooms spaces that were converted were things like science labs. I can think of 1 or 2 computer labs, a school, maybe a book room, maybe a room that's been used for small group intervention. And so at this point, those are the types of situations where we've had conversions. In kind of my survey work with our elementary schools, we have about 8 classrooms that are mobile on-the-cart classrooms. In kind of further probing about that, I don't know that they are, I think I was under the impression they were all going to be art and music, and based on my dialogue with schools, there are a few of those, but that is not, most of them are kind of special interventionist and kind of other special situations. Right now, we have 2 co-teaching classes at Mangum, and so two great classes that are where there are literally 2 certified teachers, and so they may have more than the 23, and then 21 combination classes. So a K-1 class or a 2-3 class, and that's across the whole district. Also thinking about implications, really this challenge helps us to begin thinking about the challenge of planning for magnets and planning for transfers, and I would just planning for all of this. The complexity kind of walks us right into where we will be for 18-19. Specific school challenges. At this point, I'm very pleased to report when we send our information to the state next week, we do. We will have no schools that have classes over 23. So we will be in compliance when we send our information in. We will, we also, schools with more than one class over 20 are the ones listed. So a school might have 21 in one of their classes, and so it's not really enough to necessarily open up a whole new class. What it means, though, is these are schools and classrooms that we will be monitoring to ensure that we maintain the ratios. So moving forward to 18-19. So I'm going to, the top bullet is going to be the same. That's the same funding allotment is going to be there. And then the change happens when we get to what the rule is, which is at this point we are to adhere to the funding allotment. So versus the 23 and the district average, that was the amended version. And as of now, the plan would be that we go straight into individual class size ratio maximums. We shall not exceed the funded allotment ratio of teachers to students in K-3. The state reports must ensure that K-3 classes that may not exceed the allotment ratio by more than 3 students at any given point. So if the ratio is in first grade 1 to 16, meaning you would not go over, so 16 is your funded, and so you wouldn't go over 19. So thinking about your last bullet, and this is true for 17-18 as well, which is grades 4 through 12 do have the flexibility to manage the allotted teacher positions to maximize student achievement. So there is flexibility in grades 4 through 12. I think one piece, while we're on where you have the ratio, I think a good place to point out would be John Long's comment last week and thinking about the loss of, to have this ratio, it would be the loss of 1,178 seats from last year, from 16-17. So that this legislation, in fact, would require approximately 2 new elementary schools worth of seats. And then thinking about teachers, needing 90 teachers. And so I think that Paul shared that it's the equivalent of $5.8 million for teachers. So thinking ahead, lots of planning, and it has already started. Lots of discussion around, obviously, communication. We're here sharing with you. We want to make sure that our community is well aware. I think we were able to go into 17-18 with schools doing most of the planning and trying to minimize the distraction and the disruption. I do not think that we can repeat it in the same way for 18-19 without there being greater disruption and distraction for our schools. Thinking about, obviously, the planning has begun around facilities and thinking about our building capacity, ensuring that we are aware of our building capacity with new formulas, thinking about needing 63 classroom spaces and how that will play out. Thinking about special programs. In particular, think about our pre-K classes that we love and that we want in all of our schools. And that is classroom space, and how do we think around our pre-K classes, around EC self-contained programs, and thinking about all special programs that may be in our schools. Thinking about human resources, certainly extensive recruitment and hiring plans have to be a part of this as we think about staffing, including things like early contracts, but really it's even bigger than that. I know this year we've already kind of practiced with it, with thinking about instructional assistants and moving them towards licensure, thinking about retirees. We have places where 2 retirees share a position that might be a co-teaching position. And so thinking out of the box, but also just kind of how do we find our highly qualified teachers to help us manage this. And then, of course, the allotment planning, that would be a K-12 allotment planning. We can't plan K-3 without thinking K-12, and that this does have potential to impact in our other grade levels as well. I think the need for student assignment, making sure that we're using our space. We have some schools where there is no more space, and how are they going to find room for more classes? And then, of course, I would also put in student transfers with that, because both of those go hand in hand. And then, of course, planning for the magnet school. Next steps, besides all of that, if that wasn't enough, just thinking about how we support and advocate for the enhancement allotment funding. That is a piece that was part of one of the summer bills, that the intention of the General Assembly, as written in I think it was in their summer correction bill, was to use the data that is collected to fund a new allotment for program enhancement teachers. Obviously, for the purpose of making sure that we can maintain enhancements. We appreciate that, and of course in Durham we value that very greatly. The one concern with this is that would not even be on the table until March. And we know that we plan now. We are planning for 18-19 right now. We can't wait. And so I think that's a big piece as we think about getting in front of how do we, number 2, support and advocate for the early resolution of that. And so we appreciate that that's part of their plan, but how do we make sure that we get the information that we need to be able to plan in our schools effectively for 18-19.
Thank you for that, Ms. Spencer. As you can see, great gratitude goes to Julie and the whole team. They have become experts on this. This wasn't an expertise that was oftentimes this wide spread across districts. I always think it helps to bring real life to situations, but Xavier did a wonderful job saying how rich our conversations were at dinner. We were sharing with one person in our group at our table that is talking about the want and the need from their school to want to have Spanish in their school. We presented the need for the challenge around the space. They even said they were willing to pay for the space, pay for the teacher. And then prior to this meeting, Ms. Hager and I met with some teachers that were going through some frustrations, and it related back all the way to the open house night where their rosters were being shuffled on an hourly minute basis of 2 kids coming in, 2 kids going out, just to stress that it put on teachers to not be prepared at what teachers love to be prepared on the first night in order to set the tone for their entire year. So oftentimes we get caught up in a lot of information, but we don't realize the stress and the burden and the anxiety this puts on our classrooms, our students, and our teachers. So hopefully we can contextualize that as we move forward. But again, I thank this committee for their wonderful work in getting us at least prepared informationally. And then probably in the first time of the history of the school district, we will be sending off an affidavit next week swearing to our compliance of this legislation. And believe me, it's not with the support that we sign that affidavit. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I did want to make one comment. I want to also thank the staff for the looking out and advocating for the enhancement. As a lifelong music educator, and I know we're using the state terms when we say that, but my tie is an enhancement. My classes were not. Music education is all the arts education as well as PE are integral part of particularly the early years. I understand, you know, you get middle school and high school, I don't want to do any music, that's your choice, but give them all the same start. And I, you know, I continue to be concerned. I asked about it every time we bring this up with the funds, because we're talking about funding positions, and to call something an enhancement from the state level, it gives them an excuse to say, let's just not fund any more art and PE and music teachers. So anytime we bring this up, expect me to say something about it, and I'm talking to those at the state, not here, because I know that you reflect very well the concern that Durham has and the care that Durham has for arts and our PE teachers. So thank you again for making that a very important part of your next steps.
Well, and that's why we're here. We wanted something else to fight, which is foolish. But all across the state, the North Carolina School Boards Association has asked us to put this issue at the top of every agenda, and we will keep putting it on the top of every agenda until they fix it, because the General Assembly broke it. So what they did, one legislator decided that they were funding small class sizes, and districts across the state were using flexibility, and that classes weren't really small. And they decided that we were being deceptive, when in fact what school districts across the state were doing was also providing art educators and music educators to our elementary students, something that everyone that knows child development understands and values. So this is a mess that the General Assembly made. There's a petition online if anyone's interested in it. It's you can find it from the hashtag #ClassSizeChaos. There's a petition to call the General Assembly back, not wait till they come in May, but call them back. They had a chance to fix it in October, and they didn't. We're petitioning them to come back in January and fix it. Fix it now. Fix it as soon as possible, so that we don't have to go through all of this planning and these steps to essentially be in the same place. We can't comply with this next year. I'm convinced there's no way that Durham can have 63 additional classes and 90 new teachers and still deliver art and music to our elementary students. So we're going to get to where we can't comply, but in the meantime, the General Assembly just needs to fix it, fix it, fix it. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask the attorney what happens when we don't comply.
That was going to be my
because
question.
Durham Public Schools is always going to offer art, music, and physical education to all of our children. And we know that the state says that we owe all of our children a sound basic education, and everybody knows that art, physical education, and music is a part of a basic education. So, Mr. Sue, what happens when we're out of compliance, because we will have those basics that are needed for our children to be educated excellently?
Well, I'm hopeful that this community, given the commitment that it has to public education, will be able to provide those essential parts of a child's education, including art and music, drama, perhaps foreign language, and we will also be able to maintain whatever class size limits are put down upon us. It is premature to say what would happen. I'd rather discuss that when it comes up, given the specific details of where we're out of compliance. It's not a fight yet for us. We're not out of compliance now. It's a little hard to say in the abstract, but generally it relates to reversion of state funding, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
All right.
I do have a question. I think we're all frustrated. None of us ran for school board to spend all of our time trying to fix the state. And it seems like we spend a large part of our time trying to correct. And the irony to me is that the state simultaneously advocates for for charter schools to be flexible, and that's the strength of charter schools, while they're putting more and more restrictions on public schools. It makes no sense to me. I did have two specific questions, if I could. So we're short 28 teachers?
28 vacancies
28 vacancies
in K-5.
Okay, which is basically almost one per school. How does that get calculated in? Do we just call it a position and we just still calculate it into the average even though there's not a teacher in there?
It's a great question. So this gets in very much into the case-by-case kind of situation, which it is. And it plays out a little differently in different schools based on the scenario of perhaps where they are in the hiring process and where their other class sizes are. So, for example, a few of the schools listed actually may have 20, they may even have 2 or 3 classes at 21, but they have a position posted. And when that position is posted, it will bring them off of the 21. And so it varies from a situation, and I can think of at least a couple of schools where they have 2 or 3 classes that are sitting at 21, maybe even 22, and we know that the position is posted, but the students are still in their current classroom. And in some cases, I can think of another school with similar challenge, that whereas they are going to be adding a push-in co-lead teacher. And so the students are already in a class. They're over the number, but there is a position posted that is actually going to be a co-teacher. So it's not, we also very much understand that we are dealing with real kids, real classrooms, real teachers, and it may not be in the best interest of a student to, at this time of the year, all of a sudden move into a new classroom. Now, we have some cases where they are still making changes, and they know their students, and they know their teachers, and they know when and how that can best work. But we really do, I would say Kim Hager and I and Melissa Watson with elementary, the 3 of us have kind of worked individually with schools based on their scenario to problem solve kind of in the way that's that makes sense for kids.
But kind of mathematically, when Mr. Boyer signs that affidavit, if the teacher's not under contract, they cannot be used in the calculation for an average, is that?
Well, we have, for example, teachers that perhaps have been hired but they haven't started, right, and there is a class roster ready for them and a class, and so it is being reported that the class is there. And in some cases, I can think of at least one case where we know it's a substitute teacher who is going to be working on licensure to go into the role permanently, but it just goes, we are going to make sure that when we sign that it is completely accurate and transparent, but there are particular cases whereas it may be that the teacher is in process of being hired, or it may be that we relook at the 3rd grade classes altogether and add a teacher to co-teach with one of the classes.
I do want to make sure we don't lose Mr. Boyer in this process. So, and then the other, just to make sure that I understand, so that when you so we talk about elementary school and we say a music teacher, say, is counted. So the way, if I understand it correctly, the way it normally works is we'll say we have 3 kindergarten classes, 3 first grade classes, 3 second grade classes, and then a music teacher who teaches those same kids, right? So does that mean we basically say we have 10 teachers for those kids? Or
are you talking about the LEA class average requirement, that particular piece?
Right.
So there is a lot of dialogue across the state in terms of how that calculation is going to play out, and I would say the most recent communication that I've had says that it will essentially measure by language arts class. And so it will be the class average of all of our language arts classes, kindergarten through 3rd grade. But then there is the overall caveat of all classes looking at it in terms of individual class ratio. And so those are the classes. It can be that your enhancement class is over what your language arts is. And this is how, when you have, for example, a co-teacher situation, and so the class may be at 28, then when the students go to music as 28, but the co-teachers don't go along, then that would be where we would be over and we would apply for that waiver.
Julie, am I correct to say that all through the summer and even the early fall planning, enhancement teachers weren't even in the reporting requirements? So just in the last couple of weeks, they're learning this on the go. We received additional reporting requirements to now go get all the enhancement numbers. So again, it's just an example of an additional burden and work that even from the state perspective, they're asking for specifics, and I'd love for us to be able to sit here and not just have to say examples, but they're figuring it out on the fly.
Right.
And until it's submitted, and then we all know what's going to happen, they're going to get the information and say they can't really read what's in the information. So we're going to be back to trying to figure out what are the numbers and what are the classes. So again, a lot of frustration and a lot of work, but enhancements weren't even being calculated 2 weeks ago, and
That's
So-
correct.
So I do want to say thank you to our staff and to all of our principals, assistant principals, because I know they're trying to figure all this stuff out.
That's right.
And simultaneously run a school. And it's just a nightmare. So, thank you.
I am the spokesperson for the group, but this is a group that has worked, everybody doing their part, from reporting to the facilities to working with the schools. And so it is boots on the ground for all of us. But I think, to your point, our principals are the ones that at the end of the day are planning classroom space and working with the requirement in a very real way as it relates to students and balancing classes and thinking about that. So it's not been easy, but at this point we have made this first phase, but I think the next one will bring many more challenges.
So along those lines, since you guys see it impacting teacher morale so much, I wonder if there might be just a one-page or an email communication that we could put out that says we're so appreciative of people understanding this crazy transition. The board and our local delegation are working and advocating to get some sort of waiver for provisions next year, and that we hear the concern, or something that might distill all this down. I don't think it's this PowerPoint, because this is more detail than folks would.
Absolutely.
But I think that might be a helpful communication for y'all's team to at least understand. And bring
Absolutely.
forward. Yeah.
And I would add on to that, I don't know what the communication has been to families so far, but I can imagine if I'm a parent and my child has kept moving from class to class, I'm really trying to understand, why is this happening? And so I think that'd be important to get some type of one-pager in the hands of our families and our communities so they're aware of all the different things that schools are navigating at this time. So really appreciate y'all and the hard work that you're doing. I can't imagine that is very hard, challenging, and it's easy at all. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you for all your work. It's very important, and yes, let's keep this on the agenda. Let's keep talking about it, because the legislators don't want us to talk about it. They want us to forget about it. Okay, so we go closed session. Oh yeah, no, this is it. We have a closed session.
I move we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. We are now in closed session. Report for approval. All right, we are back in open session.
I submit the October 26th personnel report for approval. As amended.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the personnel report for October 26, 2017. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimous. We are adjourned.